particular ritual, whether it's just handed down to the point of meaninglessness. And sometimes these things have been, given great importance as being indicative of inner adherence or sincerity. I'm just coming from Russia, and I was reminded when I was there recently that they have their Orthodox church members there were two prominent ways of making the sign of the cross, and one was with 2 fingers and one was with 3 fingers, and the 2 fingers indicated one thing and the 3 fingers indicated another thing. But the difference represented in this reached a feverish pitch at some point where they were ready to kill one another over this. As the ultimate absurdity, where form has totally eclipsed substance. Srila Guru Maharaj, one of his clarion calls was this principle, substance over form. That when form overtakes substance, it tends towards sahajya, or imitationism. So he's always favoring what is the substance, or the meaning, the purpose behind something. That's how it gets its value. It's like currency. It's a piece of paper with what makes it valuable is the will behind it all. There's somewhere where it's the real value is being determined or assessed. It's not always apparent what, and it's local manifestation, where you're being sort of like you're necessary. So try to look to the spirit of something. That should be given the emphasis. And Srila Guru Maharaj is speaking about Krishna Nam, and it's published in the Search for Sri Krishna. He talked about firing blank mantras. And he quoted Jagadananda Pandit from the Prema Vivarta, a determination he's given about quality of spiritual sound versus quantity or its external representation. As we heard Srila Gurudev say, practically each time when he's given Harinam initiation, puts the Padma Purana sloka, Nama Chintamani Krishnas Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purnakshara Nitya Mukto Abhinatam Nama Nama. Saying the holy name of Krishna is Nama Chintamani, like touchstone, it's capable of totally transforming one. Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, it's the full conscious representation of the Supreme Lord in divine sound. It says, Abhinatam Nama Nama. It is non-different than what is indicated. So one could be misled by that into thinking that simply by vibrating this sound, that is Krishna, or that is the holy name. But Srila Guru Maharaj invokes Jagadananda Pandit, Prema Vivarta, I think, Namakar Bahivar, Batanama Kavumoy. That the externals are never to be considered the holy name. And he gives that example of firing blank mantras. Like recently they just had the Olympics, and they always, they fire a gun before, well now they have a beeper, but they used to fire a gun before the race. And when you hear the sound of that blank, it sounds like any other gun firing with a bullet. It's the same exact sound, but in the blank, there's no bullet. It's just that sound. So he said, firing blank mantras, that the sound is there, the externals of things, but whether or not the inner substance, the inner quality of it is there, is another thing. So when, to take this to, maybe someone can just mention, they could like move a little, it comes completely into the windows, the sound of the conversation out there. You just either tone it down or move down a little bit. Guru Maharaj will not budge on this point. He's said it in so many ways, in so many places. It's a theme of his that pervades just about everything that he says. Can be reframed as form versus substance. But we should resist the tendency of knowing that, of rigidly pigeonholing something and thinking that there can be no other way of viewing it once a particular determination has been made about that, or a particular thing has been said. That's the final word on it. There's no final word on the infinite. So he's given the example that when, as Gurudev was mentioning on the disappearance day of Swarup Damodar Goswami, which coincides with Rath Yatra, that must indicate something about Mahaprabhu's disappearance. One of the things they say is perhaps as many times he mysteriously disappeared from his room, the Gambhira, which only had one way out and no windows, and it would be locked with someone sleeping in front of it, and still he would be found, not found within the room, but wandering madly around Puri, mistaking sun dunes for Govardhan Hill, the ocean for the Jamuna River, and lost in his divine madness. So, one such time, it's recorded by Kaviraj Goswami in the Chaitanya Charitamritam, that a fisherman found the divine golden form of Mahaprabhu in his net, and as he pulled the net in to see what his catch was, there was Gauranga Mahaprabhu, but in a apparently unconscious state on account of deep there's three states of consciousness: external, half internal, half external, and the deep internal state. So when he's in the deep internal state, there's a disconnect from the plane of the senses here. So Mahaprabhu is unresponsive, and the man, by touching his divine form, became infused with contact praying and began to vibrate Krishna Nam uncontrollably, and thought that he'd lost his mind. So meanwhile, Swarup Damodar and the devotees with torches were searching everywhere for Mahaprabhu and trying not to think the unthinkable, that he has left the world. This happened to them many times. And then they came upon this fisherman who was completely besides himself, who thought that he had become inhabited by some ghost. And as he described that ghost to Swarup Damodar was somewhere related. He said, "Oh, I am an exorcist. You've come to the right man. I know how to deal with this specific ghost. So if you'll take me to him, I can help you." And so he took him and all the devotees, and they found Mahaprabhu in the net in this pathetic condition. And Swarup Damodar and the devotees, they began to vibrate Krishna Nam. And there Krishna Nam gradually brought Mahaprabhu to consciousness. And when he was in the plane of half internal and half external consciousness, he started describing what he was seeing in the inner regions of the highest reality. And then he began to wail and lament and said, but then you all made some noise and brought me here. And he began to cry. So Srila Guru Maharaj, at that point, he chose to make some observations. He said, who is chanting Krishna Nam in this instance? This is Swarup Damodar, all the entourage, the eternal associates of Mahaprabhu. There are no higher devotees than this. It's their Krishna Nam. Whenever we conceive of what might be Krishna Nam, Shuddha Nam, certainly we include them within the category of those who would be qualified to vibrate Krishna Nam. Right? So he says, compared to the ankle bells of the gopis, the sounds of their lotus feet moving in the plain of Vrindavan, the Krishna Nam of Swarup Damodar and the others was like some noise compared to the sweetness of the sounds of that plain. So how extraordinary that must be. And that he is demeaning the Krishna Nam of Swarup Damodar and the others. That means there must be a gradation of even within the realm of divine substance. Right? But then Srila Guru Maharaj gave an entirely diametrically opposed interpretation of this, to show we're dealing with the infinite, and we can't have some think that we've got it caged within the prison of our conception. So he said, or rather we can think that what we learn from this is that the power of Krishna Nam is so great that it was given preference to direct participation in Leela. He's directly participating in Leela, and the sound of Krishna Nam could pull him away. It's even greater in this sense. So these are two diametrically opposed conceptions being harmonized in one central absolute. So before we go to examine anything or to make a determination on something, we'll have to very carefully assess what its position is. It may not be what it appears to be. In fact, if anything, we could err on the side of it's probably not what it appears to be. And Krishna consciousness, that may be in most cases. Srila Gurudev likes to tell the story of that Vyad, so the hunter who, Vyad means hunter, sounds like that, you'd say that bad man, but Vyad, hunter, he's at a certain point in his day, I guess, taking the slaughtered animals, hunted slaughtered animals, and selling them for a livelihood. And as we've seen in India, they always have those scales, and they always use like a 5 paisa coin or a 2, but they've got little stones and things that sort of make it right before they give, oh, that'll be so many rupees. But in his case, what he was using to balance the scales after the major weights were put on was a shelagram shila. So that's in this apparently abominable circumstance. One Brahmin comes by and sees he's using a shelagram shila to weigh and sell meat. And he's horrified to see this and thinks, oh, this abominable fool, and convinces him to give him the shelagram, and he'll take that shelagram and engage in perhaps the 16 types of paraphernalia, or this type of puja, that type of puja, and restore it to its pristine position, and perhaps some prayashchitya, atonement for the ignorance of this hunter, and along these lines. And the hunter says, oh, I didn't know. Foolish me. So that Brahmin, he's clapping as many times as you need to clap. He's got it all just right. Those mantras are there, and they're chanted this way and not that way, and in this direction and not that direction, or this type of water and not that type of water, and you got everything that you just need to make it perfect. Right? To what? Please the Lord. Because that's the purpose of all of this, right? What is that? Dharma svanashitakum sang vishvatem kata. No pariya jarivitam shrama evakevalam. But another I can't think of right now. But to please the Lord. That's sangsid here haritoshana. Haritoshana means to please the Lord. And then he's now knowing that he's done all the right things, and the right quantities, and the right amounts, with the right mantra, the right this, that, and the other thing, can rest and finally go to sleep. And when he does, that deity appears to him in a dream, utterly dissatisfied, not pleased. He said, you fool, you don't understand. That Vyag, that hunter, he's a great devotee of mine from a former lifetime. And he has so much affection and love for me that his scale for me is like a swing. And every day I'm there swinging on that scale, and very happily with my devotee. And then you took me from my happy home and are forcing all this puja on me. And then, so in this way, the greatness of that devotee was discovered. And does that mean in every situation it's going to be like this? No. As Srila Guru said, by the devotion of Prahlad Maharaj, Nrsingadev came out of a pillar. Does that mean he's going to come out of a pillar for everybody? No. So, but still, these examples are there to inform us about what the substantial thing is. So, there are different prayers are given toward the end of any type of puja, basically saying that if I screwed anything up, please forgive me, because I'm unqualified and I don't know what I'm doing. But, so, that is there, and Srila Gurudev takes it a step further, saying the last prayer in any real spiritual function, and the yajnas in particular, talk about the glories of Krishna Nam, and it's all compensating, all accommodating nature. Nam Sankirtan. As the Bhagavatam itself, after so many things are given, the final sloka says, Nam Sankirtanam Yasya Sarva Papa Pranashanam Pranamo Dukasamanas Tam Namami Harim Param. Saying the ultimate issue, the holy name of Krishna and this Nam Sankirtan, glorifying Krishna, the presence of his devotees. This will remove any pop, sarva papa pranashanam. It'll all be destroyed by even a remote connection with this plane. So, and its intention. What is the intent of the servitor? Like there's some expression, like they said, possession is 9/10 alone, but it's also like motive. is also 9/10 or even more. What is the motive? What is the basis for all of this? Ado arpita paschad kriyeta. What qualifies something as devotion is the motive. Not any ulterior motive, but simply to Krishna, please Krishna. When we hear it was the method of Srila Saraswati Thakur for deity installation was he would come up and take the tulsi leaves, offer them to the lotus feet of Krishna, give his dandavats, and that would be the final act of installation. And once Srila Guru Maharaj, seeing the height of where the deity was on the altar, and seeing where Prabhupada Guru Maharaj would be, he realized that could be, he might strain himself in doing this. And he took the tulsi leaves and offered them to the lotus feet of the deity, anticipating that he didn't want his guru to strain himself or overexert himself. But when Saraswati Thakur came and saw the tulsi leaves at the lotus feet of the deity, he said, "Oh, they have installed themselves." And as now all the devotees were delighted, and it was like a growing legend in the Gaudiya Math. But Srila Guru Maharaj was aghast. "Oh no, what have I done?" And he later wrote a letter to Srila Saraswati Thakur explaining the situation. And he felt that he had committed some offense by what he'd done. And in the famous answer, Srila Saraswati Thakur said to him that, he said, "For a surrendered soul, there are no offenses." And this is also based upon the Bhagavatam. It's a Shrapadamudam Bhajatam Priyasya. That once in the Gaudiya Math, some devotees, something that happened, they felt some uneasiness, awkwardness about one particular devotee. And that there might have been some abuse of positioning or situation. And asked Srila Guru Maharaj on their behalf to represent their concerns to Srila Saraswati Thakur. And at the time, interesting, Srila Saraswati Thakur said to Guru Maharaj, he was disappointed. So to hear something like this from you, I expect more from you. From the others I can understand, but from you. So Guru Maharaj left this immediately. But a few months later, and Saraswati Thakur didn't expound further. Then a few months later in the Madras Gaudiya Math, Saraswati Thakur was looking through the Bhagavatam, and he came to this sloka, Svapada Mulam Bhajatam Priyasa. He said, "Here's your answer." As a non sequitur, Guru Maharaj thought, I didn't ask any questions. And then he went, "Oh," and Saraswati, "This is the answer to your question." And he said, "Oh, Prabhupada's been thinking about this for months now." And that verse says, and I'm paraphrasing now, saying, "But for one who's surrendered to the lotus feet of Krishna," this means the devotee, through the agency of Guru, they're engaged in service in this life. What they're doing is already the highest purificatory activities imaginable. This is what they're normally engaged in. There's nothing superior to this. There's nothing more purifying than this. If that person, they err at some times with judgment or otherwise, there's no punishment for them, there's no atonement for them, because what they're already doing is the highest purification. So Guru Maharaj gave the example of a policeman. They're already authorized on behalf of the government, the citizenry, to do their... sometimes they make a mistake, but they're not punished unless it's a total abuse. So they're forgiven in the line of duty when they're sincerely, wholly given themselves over. And this is not a minor point, but a very critical point, that even the great spiritual authorities sometimes debating and trying to understand. As we heard that Srila Guru Maharaj, quoting Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Bhagavad Gita, this Apichet Suraracharo Bhajate Mam Ananyabhav, that even if a devotee has done something objectionable to the extreme, that we should not think less of them spiritually. And Guru Maharaj said that in this way, he said, once Bhaktivinoda Thakur went for a walk in the sky taking Krishna Nam. And he's taking Krishna Nam and walking in the sky. Sometimes he said it a little differently, but why not? He's in the subtle, ethereal plane. And he came upon an assembly of the Mahajans discussing the very meaning of this sloka. And means Brahma, Shiva, and others, trying to understand what Krishna has given in Gita is infinite. It's open to infinite interpretation and newer levels of meaning, newer levels of meaning, depth revealed. So it's a Bhajate Mam Ananyabhak. Ananyabhak means an exclusive devotee. So they recognized in Bhaktivinoda Thakur an Ananyabhak Bhakta, an exclusive devotee. We'll invite him to explain this. So if we want to estimate the position of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, we think that he's giving a class to the 12 Mahajans. He's enlightening them about Krishna consciousness. So what is his position? As Guru Maharaj said, when we consider the magnitude of his contribution, we can understand it's not something acquired in this lifetime, but rather that he descended from the highest plane to distribute something. So anyway, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, because the general interpretation of this verse is, Abhichet Suraracharo, if he's done something abominable, still, he should be considered saintly. And the next verse says, Kipram Bhavati Dharmatma Shashvat Shantim Nigashati Kontya Pratijanahi Name Bhakta Pranashati. Because soon he gets redirected on the rightful path, and it has a more ostensibly forgiving tone to it. Soon he'll overcome this and be resituated again. Dharmatma, he'll become dharmic again. So he'll withstand the negative effects of that apparent deviation. That's like the general understanding of it. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, no, there's some, with that sort of interpretation, there's really something that's incongruous. Because someone helped that child. Seems to be searching mother with great intensity. From the chanting of the holy name is like the sincere cry of a child for his mother. Because there may be some insincere cries too. They usually know when they're faking it and ignore them. And other people go, how can you do that? Because they know. But then when the sincere cry comes, then immediately they're going, or so we've heard. Anyway, so he's saying, here's what's incongruous. He's saying, Ananya Bhakta, an exclusive, pure devotee. one who is Anyavilashita Shunyam Gyam. They've given up, they have no ulterior motives. Right? A 100% devotee of Krishna. Now, if that's their qualification, if they've done something objectionable, if your faith in them does not waver on account of that, you'll be benefited, because they're not going to become dharmic. What is the qualification? They're not going to be re-dharmicized, because the qualification to be an exclusive devotee is sarvadharmam parichajamam mamekam sharanam braja. They've already transcended what is the general dharmic plane, right? They've given that up. So you're going to say now again, they're going to take that up as a response to some apparent deviation? No. Rather, if your faith does not waver and you adjust this in the light of their sadhureva samantavya, their unshakable devotion, you'll become dharmic, dharma. You'll be benefited by seeing them in this way. So this is a controversial explanation. Once I heard from Srila Guru Maharaj that some of his godbrothers objected to him airing this about. And I said, I mentioned that, and Guru Maharaj, a little dramatically but playfully, said, "Who are these guys?" And I said, "I don't know who they are. I don't know them or have anything to do with them." But then he named who it was, and he just laughed, and he said, he was thinking that this will be abused by people, because everyone will say, "Oh, I'm like that. So what you've seen, I'm doing." That type of insincere abuse. But that would not stop him from giving vent to what the truth is. And this is the truth of the matter. So, and the only example that comes to my mind immediately is that of Parashara Rishi, Parashara Muni. We're told he is crossing a river, and one fisherman's daughter, he becomes overwhelmed, and the outcome is Veda the ass. So, how shall that be viewed? So, at any rate, we'll always look for inner substance and the evidence of their even trace amounts of divine will. What is the will of Krishna? Any other questions?
Laura, when you're saying some evidence of it, in the beginning, you were saying that Maharaj was saying that they're saying there's some evidence of abuse. Is that what you said? I didn't actually
When?
In the beginning of this story, when Guru Maharaj went to the
Oh, on behalf of a group of devotees, right, complaining about another devotee.
Right. Meaning abuse of what?
That's irrelevant.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
My question is, it's difficult to see one devotee abusing another devotee. I find that really hard to
Of course, no, that is another thing. That's not what we're talking about in this case. We're talking about something else, like fun, things like that. No. To abuse, how can we advance in Krishna consciousness if we're abusing those who are dear to Krishna? That will obstruct our progress. That's not what was meant.
Thought produce karma?
I didn't hear that?
Can thought produce karma? Just my thinking.
Yes.
If you were saying there about the motive is everything.
Because look, we're saying everything springs out of consciousness. So, of course, it can also be prevented from reaching that stage. There's thinking, feeling, willing, acting. But that acting what's at the basis of it is thinking, consciousness. Or we can say, or lack of consciousness. But certainly everything springs out of the plane of consciousness. Sometimes we've heard that in previous ages where people were more qualified, that even thinking something had more, was more, what's the word, had more substance to it than, say, in the present times when when we're bombarded with so much imagery from the environment. It's natural in the modern environment that our mind will be flooded by media and the surroundings with different types of imagery. We don't have to necessarily take that so seriously. But when it comes to living within the association of devotees, how we view other devotees, we should be very careful about that. Because that can lead, offensive thinking can lead to offensive behavior. Die. Any other question?
Should we basically try to kind of go through the world with a critical or judging mentality? Because I was thinking of the hunter, so how can we see who's who anyway? So should we just...
No. The progressive position is one of weighing, measuring, assessing. It's required to make progress. Blind faith is unhealthy. It's a type of faith, but it's not healthy. So in time, if we're properly recognizing what is the substance of Krishna consciousness, then we should be able to measure that against what is not. Contrast is helpful. Opposition is helpful. Opposition comes along to promote belief, for us to re-examine what we believe, why we believe something. And, Krishna conception is honed against misconception. So, but once we begin to assess or judge, there's also the danger of erroneous judgment, erroneous assessment, that we will be mistaken. But it's necessary to make progress. So, but some risk is involved. Therefore, we have these three, checks and balances: sadhu, shastra, guru, to measure against. When Srila Saraswati Thakur, you can imagine, on the Brajamandal Parikrama, they're in Vrindavan, where the famed land of Krishna, where everyone's a devotee of Krishna, so-called. And afterwards, Saraswati Thakur presses his palm, slaps his palm against his forehead, and says, "Oh, I'm so unfortunate." And all the devotees look and say, "I couldn't find a single Vaishnava in Vrindavan." And they're all shocked. They're really shocked by that. They didn't all go, "Yeah, I didn't either." It wasn't like that. They're all like, "What did we just do?" And then they offered up someone who was the Siddha Mahatma of his day. "What about so-and-so?" They knew it. Chanting 3 lakhs of Krishna Nam every day, 300,000 names, 192 rounds. Reading only the works of the Goswamis. Sometimes moved to apparently deep states of ecstasy at the mere sound of the name of Krishna. What about him? Saraswati Thakur, He's a Kanishta Adhikari, devotee of the lowest or beginning stage, practitioner. They're even more bewildered by these remarks. So, Srila Guru Maharaj, included himself within the group of those who were somewhat perplexed by these revelations. And that's why we don't really mean to make light of it. This is something very crucial to understand. Because we should not dismiss the attempts of others. But this is Srila Saraswati Thakur. And Guru Maharaj said that he later had the opportunity to observe that gentleman that he was referring to. And he said, I would look at him and see what was that situation, and in my mind's eye, I would see my Guru Maharaj. And look toward him and hear, remember what he said also. And then look at this gentleman, and then look at my Guru Maharaj. And he said, one thing that he noticed was these so-called ecstatic states. When we were talking about Mahaprabhu and Swarup Damodar and the devotees finding him, sometimes, as recorded in Chaitanya Bhagavat and Chaitanya Charitamrita, it took him 8 hours to come back to any semblance of external consciousness. Whereas this gentleman, 1 minute was showing some deep ecstatic condition, then he would snap out of it and say, did you get those potatoes? Odyssey perhaps later on today? Oh, good. So it was too abrupt transition. If it was that deep, you couldn't segue that quickly to the external world. So that was, Guru Maharaj noted that. Then someone else came in and announced to him that, oh, haven't you heard? So-and-so Das Babaji is celebrating his 50th year in Vrindavan. And yes, but he was a householder. Then he played his lifelong brahmachari card that, too, in other words, he couldn't tolerate the glorification of the other in his presence. So Guru Maharaj did that ego. Right? Ego means self-assertion. Pratishta means to establish yourself. That is one meaning of pratishta. Right? I read in the Prapanati Vinamritam today that sloka where it says, what is nama? Like when we're always saying obeisances and nama in the beginning or the end. Saying ma means self-assertive ego. Na-ma means without that. So when we bow down, we mean to say, I'm not coming before you with that self-assertive ego, but rather I want to, without that, offer myself as a servant to the higher plane, to the wishes of Guru, etc. So he detected this ego, and then gradually observing different symptoms, things that were symptomatic of a lack of genuine higher substance. Guru Maharaj said, I came to a conclusion, and that was that this gentleman, by his practices, and this should be noted also, his behavior was known to be impeccable. It was not under question, that there were not rumors. He's a serious practitioner, and that makes this example even better. That he had an impeccable behavior, reputation, etc. Was following as strictly as you could all the Vaishnava Sadachar, everything. But Guru Maharaj said, I concluded, by his practices, he's trying to elevate himself toward that higher plane from which my Guru Maharaj descended. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, they descended from the highest plane, the highest part of reality, into this plane to distribute something for the benefit of others. They're not practitioners. So when Saraswati Thakur made these observations from that point of view, what is his conception of a Vaishnava? That standard of those with whom he is acquainted, the Bhakti Vinod Thakurs of the world, the Gorkishore Das Babaji Maharaj, Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, and those from the plane from which he descended, I couldn't find a single Vaishnava of that type. The caution should be there for us, for admittedly the lowest plane of being allowed by the grace of Vaishnavas to have some connection with Krishna consciousness, that we shall so easily go around dismissing others is not a good idea. Neither is it entirely realistic. But if we've heard these things from our Guru Varga, they can inform us and help us come to our aid in certain situations. As once I found myself in Vrindavan in the beginning, what we call the beginning days, before the Krishna Balaram temple was there. So devotees, we just came and sort of temple hopped in the evening. Those were our pastimes, to go from one temple to another, getting a little prasadam and observing what we could. But our vision was very skewed. And we were unchaperoned and prone to get in trouble by mixing with the people there. Mahaprabhu warned even his eternal associate Jagadananda Pandit, don't mix extensively. Right? Stay always under the care of Sanatana Gosvami at every moment. Don't, be out of his sight. So when we were there, going from temple to temple to temple, just according to our eye exercise and what was pleasing to us. Oh, didn't you like that? Oh, I thought that last temple was really nice. But we didn't know really where we're wandering. And so I remember once at this particular temple where we were charmed by the beauty of the deity and the ceremonies they had in the evening and the songs they sang. It was very charming. And at the end of the Shayana Arati, one of the elders there said to me and another devotee, oh, you should come for Mangal Arati tomorrow morning if you can. And just like make conversation. That Arati, that last Arati was very brief. And I said, oh, I hope it's longer than this one. Because that was like 5 minutes. And then I said, we don't trouble our gods with Arati. And I was like, shocked. And I didn't know what to say. And then I said, you must understand the unique position of the Brijvasi. We don't worship Krishna. We just have love for Krishna. Pure love. Now I was really intimidated and fumbling and dumbstruck. And the first, by Prabhupada's grace, this came to my mind because I had the good fortune of recently hearing him say something. And we never know when something the Guru said is going to come to our aid. And so Prabhupada, I just heard him say, quote, Mahaprabhu saying, Na prema gandhasti dharapi me haro. I don't have a scent of the fragrance of Krishna prema. What to speak of anything more substantial. So I said, didn't Mahaprabhu say, I don't have a drop of love for Krishna? If I had any, I would have died long ago. And I said, Mahaprabhu, that is the beginning stage. But you gotta get out. What had I asked? You know, Mahaprabhu is Radha Govinda Militva. Krishna, Radha and Krishna combined. Rasa Raj Mahabhav Dui Ekaru. But they're thinking he's some sentimental devotee. As when Srila Saraswati Thakur was with his devotees in Radha Kunda once, and one of the local pandits there hearing the divine name of Srila Raghunath Das Gosvami and thinking of the externals of his social situation, not a Brahmin in the strict literal sense. He said, oh, Das Goswami, we can give our blessings to Das Goswami and his wife. When Saraswati Thakur heard that, they came to give prasad. He refused to take prasadam. All of his devotees, the hundreds of them accompanying him on this parikrama, they began fasting, and there was like gloom over the Gaudiya Math party, and the man was totally bewildered. Why? And then they sent someone as a representative to explain to him the situation, that Raghunath Das Goswami is the Prayojan Tattva Acharya of all of those in this line. And he is the ultimate guru, Rupa Raghunath, of Srila Saraswati Thakur, and you've offended his guru. And therefore he will not take anything, neither will any of his followers. And what you've made is a very foolish statement. Raghunath Das Goswami reveals that our ultimate necessity is realized in service of the lotus feet of Srimati Radharani. His famous sloka, Ashavare Amrita Sindhumari Katanchit Kalo Hayati Kavita Silatam Sampratami Tamche Kripamai Vidasa Shanai Vikimai Prane Vajena Chabaro Rupakari Napi. That for devotees, more important than their lives, more important than Vrindavan, and more important than Krishna himself is the connection with her lotus feet and the service to her lotus feet. And the person who's revealed this to us in the world, you're saying you're in a position to give blessings to him. The man really, oh, I'm so foolish, and he came and fell at the feet of Saraswati Thakur and begged forgiveness, and all was forgiven, and they took prasadam. But Srila Saraswati Thakur said, if I was just here doing bhajan as a devotee myself, I would have let it go. I wouldn't have said anything about it. I would have withdrawn from that, lamenting it, but just let it go. He said, but as an acharya, I'm here with hundreds of followers, and at that time in a motor car, which was unthinkable. They didn't go to holy places wearing shoes or ever using any sort of a vehicle. And he's there flanked by followers in Western dress, and hundreds of them in a motor car touring Radha Kunda and Vrindavan as the Acharya of the Gaudiya Math. He said, therefore I had to say something. So it's his position to say that, but that the remarks of our Guru Varga and their behavior come to save us from time to time and to assist us and show for us what the way is. Jai Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Deva Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Vishnu Srila Bhakti Rakha Srila Deva Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Srila Bhakti Santa Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Srila Bhakti Guru Varga Ki Jai. And Ram Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Ki Jai. Ganga Devi, Jamuna Devi, Bhakti Devi, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Jai Sri Sripad Swarup Bhakti Swarup Chaitanya Maharaj Ki Jai. Seva Vrinda Ki Jai. Seva Bhakti Ki Jai. Nitai Go Premanand.